So you might ask yourself, what is real and what is not real? And why are the young people losing belief in the American economic model? Well, let's go over it as a very high level overview. What is not real is that we no longer have a domestic, holistic American manufacturing and assembly economy. The demand for American manufactured goods is still very strong in the United States of America. So the U.S. economy imports manufactured goods from all over the world. So what's not real is our domestic economy is no functioning as it once did because we outsourced all our manufacturing jobs and assembly jobs overseas, primarily to China. And with that said, what is real in that same context is that we, as an electorate, are a constituent of our U.S. representatives and congressmen. We have not petitioned them successfully on a state level and federal level to basically to outlaw outsourcing. That's our reality. And it's a detriment to our quality of life. We have the power to petition our state legislators and our federal congressmen to, in fact, to outlaw outsourcing, which would, in fact, bring our natural demand economy, the American domestic demand economy, back home. And those manufactured goods and assembled goods, again, would be manufactured and assembled in the United States of America, creating large pools of jobs for the citizens of the United States, and therefore their personal economy would be made whole again. It's all about market share. And we've got to get in and correct it. The outsourcing of our jobs to overseas nations. The primary one is a political and economic foe, who is China. We've got to reverse that. Now, new people in the job market cannot blame themselves for not finding a full-time job. It's not their fault. Now, it's unfortunate to say that managers in this new job market now are going to be convinced that all the new hires are the boogeyman. And therefore, because you're the boogeyman, because they just want 20 years of seeing 20 years of cycles of layoffs, and they're fearful that they're going to be put on the short list of being laid off. They're going to hire someone smart and younger. Not all managers are going to think you're their replacement, but unethical managers might. So you never know. It's very widespread. So unfortunately, on your 89th day, you're probably going to be told to call your employment agency manager. And unfortunately, when you call them, you're going to find out that the assignment contract has ended. And that's very unfortunate. So right now in the job market, in the employment hiring agency world, where they call themselves staffing agencies or IT recruiters, they say, they're going to bring you on as a temporary assignment. But is it a temporary assignment, or is it really a permanent job? But most of the time, they tell you, corporate America tells you, or the companies operating in the United States, they will tell you that it's a temporary assignment. And usually probation is 90 days. Now, with that said, the employment agencies are unofficially, probably, I don't know for sure, but it looks like they're working with certain companies or certain corporations to circumvent state and federal labor law. Because you're hired permanently, once you're hired permanently by a corporation or a company in the United States, you're protected by state and federal labor laws, and they're rather robust protections. Now, the unscrupulous companies and corporations know this, and they're using employment agencies, staffing agencies, and IT recruiters to work you for 89 days, or give or take, or they're going to work you for like 83 days, give or take a day, right? But before your 90-day probation is up, they're going to release you from that assignment. Now, some companies do hire direct, but those companies that hire direct, they don't hire very often at all, like they used to when we had a really robust economy back in the 70s and before the 70s. Now, what these companies and corporations are doing to circumvent state and federal labor laws is they tell you that all they have is a temporary assignment. They only have a temporary assignment for 90 days. But again, it only goes for 82 days, give or take a day, right? A week before the 90 days. So they always call you, and they tell you to call your employment agency or staffing agency or IT recruiter, and then you call and they inform you that your assignment ended. So it was just a temporary assignment, according to that company or that corporation hiring. But here's the problem. They do this again 3 months down the line. They do it again. They hire somebody else for a 90-day temporary assignment. So they do this in January, and that person doesn't make the probation. They do that again in April, and they hire them for another 90 days temporary assignment. And when June rolls around, or before your 90-day assignment ends, they tell you the assignment ended. And so they do it again. They've done it 2 times in the calendar year already. But then they do it again for September. So they do it again for September. So basically, they do back-to-back hiring of temporary assignments for 90 days. Nobody makes their probation. So there wasn't a temporary assignment. There was a permanent job, but they hired 4 different people for temporary assignments for 90 days at a time. But they're circumventing state and federal laws, because it was really a permanent job, and they had no want or no interest to hire somebody in a permanent job, but it was a permanent job. So these unscrupulous companies and unscrupulous corporations are working with these employment agencies, staffing agencies, and IT recruiters purposely to circumvent state and federal law. Now, if this was true, a couple of years later, they might, eventually hire somebody permanent, but they almost never do. Originally, I think they told Congress and state legislators, we have to do this to stay competitive with China. But if this was true to stay competitive with China, this would have ended a couple years ago. But it hasn't ended a couple years ago. They just continually do it. This is 20 years later. They're still doing it. So Congress and the state legislature have got to do something about this. They've got to have heard about this. This has been going on for 10, 20 years now. Everyone must know this is going on. It's time for the Congress or the state legislators to pass state laws or federal law that catches these employment agencies and staffing agencies and these IT recruiters who are circumventing, along with these unscrupulous companies, unscrupulous corporate companies that are circumventing federal and state laws, that they do it for 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 month period. They've just got to close them down. These employment agencies and these staff agencies and these IT recruiters have become nothing but just almost servitude type corporations. And we outlawed these servitude contract companies. Indentured servants was outlawed, and that's how they're now treating the new people entering the job market, the new young adults entering the job market. They are treating like indentured servants, and the Congress and the state legislators have got to do something about it and stop them, because they won't stop themselves. Because they just don't care anymore. It's sad to say, they just don't care. So hopefully Congress will in fact do something about it. But it's going to take the young people to really take it into their own hands and start getting a hold of their state legislators and their congressmen to really, even if it's for a temporary period of 3 years, if they don't want to stop circumventing state and federal labor laws, then they've got to be closed down. Now, our economy is really not expanding anymore. Now, the only economy really expanding right now is China. No one's really doing very good but China. Somebody before COVID-19 and the Ukraine war, Germany was doing pretty good, but that was before COVID-19 and the Ukraine war broke out. So if you're a young person and if you don't have a good paying job, a good salary, don't blame yourself if you don't have your own personal economy. Because it's not your fault if you don't have a good paying job that pays your own way and you have your own personal economy. Because it's not your fault. It's really the United States government's decision, starting with the Bill Clinton administration, to send our manufacturing to Communist China, to try to convince China to modernize in a Western way and become a modern representative democracy. So we really sold out our economy, and the people who are really suffering are the young people of our economy, because all our jobs were sent over to China. And all these guys at the top who think they're smartest guys in the room, these guys in top of corporate America, the captains of industry in charge of the big companies of America, are the big managers, are the senior executives of our best corporations. All they do is lay off their co-workers. These are cold-blooded, greedy people. Now, all these cold-blooded, greedy people, all these senior executives of these corporations and big companies, they probably get along very well with each other. They probably think it's the second coming of the Great Gatsby, and they're probably having a lot of fun at really destroying our economy, sending all our market share to communist China. Now, it may be true that 1 out of 100 people who get hired straight out of college or university, and they go work for a big corporation in the United States and get paid a good salary with benefits, probably close to 6 figures or maybe 6 figures. But that's 1 out of 100. 99 of other people are not finding employment in our own country. And believe it or not, the country of the people, by the people, for the people, our government consciously sent all our jobs over to China. Now, China has not been reciprocal with us. For instance, Chinese people come here and work for American companies. But have you ever heard of an American going to China working for a Chinese company? Probably not, because they don't do it. Now, have you ever heard of a lot of people going to Europe and working for European companies? Probably not. So if you can't find a good high-paying job here in the United States, don't think there's anything wrong with you. Because it's not your fault. So don't self-destruct, I guess what I'm trying to tell you. Don't self-medicate where you end up self-destructing. Just get into sport or a hobby. That's what you should do. Just get into a sport or a hobby. Just don't blame yourself. It has nothing to do with you. So when these people tell you about all these young people, generation, have all these mental health issues and giving you all these acronym and abbreviations for all these new mental problems, no, don't blame yourself. We sent all these jobs over to China. So it's not you. If we had not sent all these jobs over to China, there'd be plenty of jobs here. And if you were able to obtain a 40-hour job of some sort, whether a salary job or a blue-collar job, most of your problems would go away because you'd have your own personal economy. So it's not your fault that you don't have your own personal economy. And if we ever bring some jobs back, you will get a 40-hour job and you'll be perfectly fine. And all these crazy people who say that there's some sort of mental problem with our youth, they'll just fade away. And by the way, they're just probably consultants themselves and are monetized in selling this problem with the youth having mental issues. They're probably counselors, they're trained psychologists, they're life coaches. They're just trying to make a salary and pay their own way as well. So you can't really blame them from trying to make everybody with a personal mental issue or mental health issue, I guess what they're calling it now, right? But it's really the real problem people are the senior executives of American corporations and senior executives of American companies who are just throwing their co-workers underneath the bus by just trying to lay them off so they can post profits because of lackluster performance, and they don't know how to make a profit any other way just to throw a little co-worker on a layoff list and post more profits that way. Now, what we can do is look at a modern economy that really works and to solve our issues here concerning employment and economy for our country. And that would be Japan. Now, Japan has a robust economy. Even though they say they have issues and problems, they have very high employment. And the vast majority of people who are salaried people, they call them salarymen, These people who have salary jobs get paid basically enough to pay their own way. So full-time employment compared with Japan, it's much higher in Japan. So we can really copy Japan's economic model for a quick fix. If we don't want to really think of something new or innovative, maybe you do, you can. But the quick fix is just do what the Japanese government is doing. They're partnering with their private industry. The government in Tokyo works very closely with their financial institutions, and they work very closely with the Japanese companies, whether they're manufacturers or not. The Japanese government people have no problem calling up a Japanese bank and telling them, hey, we want you to make a new loan for a manufacturer in Japan that's having difficulties right now. These people are naturally patriotic with their culture and their ways and their traditions. Most companies in Japan will do a recommendation by their government. Now, some bankers in Japan might not do that. They don't have to do it. So there are bankers who say, no, thank you, we won't do that. But probably within the day of making different phone calls to different bankers, some banker in Japan will make that soft loan to that manufacturer in Japan. So the point is they got a great partnership between the government in Japan and the private sector in Japan and all the different industries in Japan, whether the bankers and financing companies or manufacturers and assemblers or service companies, they all work together in a very different way and a great, great partnership. Now, American corporations have a different mindset. They are very independent, and that is good, and it's worked for us up to about the 70s. It worked for us when captains of industry were really about doing the right thing. The old Protestant American mindset or the Catholic American mindset of treating people good worked good. But we have since trying to outsource to compete with Japan in the 90s, with China, primarily allowing all our manufacturing to go to China in the 90s and the 2000s. What's happened now is that our old model that built America up prior to the 1970s is gone. It doesn't really exist anymore. In some ways it does, but not in the same big, robust way. So now everybody, the government, of the people, by the people, for the people, our government, we, the people, have got to figure out a better way to create high-paying jobs for our people, the American people. And that's what we can do. We are the people. Now, we can look at another example of a great economy. Before COVID-19 and the Ukraine war, Germany was a great model, and maybe they'll come back. Now, there's other economies that are doing pretty good that may not make sense to copy that model. Norway, for instance, is a small economy, but they're really, energy resource rich, and they're focused on producing energy for Europe. And they're doing very well, but they may not be an applicable example. South Korea is a great example in Asia that we can follow that model. Now, France isn't doing very good right now, but France in the past has done very good. And the French really have a better way of thinking where they're not treating their people like widgets. And we got to get back to somewhere where we're treating people like people. And so we're going to have to find a model that we like, and then we're going to have to get a hold of our state legislators and our congressmen and really start coming up with some brainstorming ideas how to create and save our economy from these greedy senior executives in corporate America who are really throwing our economy under the bus and selling us out, our entire country, our entire nation, all our steals our representative democracy, our constitutional republic under the bus and given it to Communist China. And Communist China, what did they do for us? They gave us COVID-19. And they won't even allow us to investigate the origins. That's what Communist China is doing for us. So it's time for us to take back the leadership role away from the greedy people in corporate America. They have no interest in hiring people full-time in America anymore, because this hiring model they've created by design or by default, or by design and default, to keep the unions out, have treated all new young people entering the job market like a widgets, just to post more profits for themselves. They have really lost responsibility really to be an American in any capacity, even in the captain of industry. Now, if young people in this country really want to end this really job market, this brutal job market of entering a job market on a 90-day period of probation, of a management model of hiring people, which has no intention of allowing anyone to make their 90-day probational period, and now have entered really indentured servitude contracts with companies that are disguised as employment agencies, staffing agencies, and IT recruiters. They have just become indentured servitude companies, which, by the way, indentured servitude is outlawed, and purposely just to circumvent state and federal labor law. This is really a violation of law. And nobody is making their, in any significant number, no group of new hires in any significant number is making their 90-day probational period. Now they're only hiring people for 90 days, 6 months, 2 years. The point is, that's not the way it used to be. Now, employees are supposed to have the federal right, the federal labor law right, to either join a union or not join a union. But corporate America, in league with these employment agencies, have circumvented the federal law that allows the employees to decide for themselves to become a member of a union or not. Now, ironically speaking, most new hires don't want to join a union, but it doesn't change the fact that corporate companies in America have made a pact with the devil. These new employment agencies, staffing agencies, IT recruiters, who will really become professional criminal companies that circumvent state and federal law, in league with these scrupulous corporations and unscrupulous companies. So why would they be hiring for a 90-day temporary job 4 times a year or 8 times over a 2-year period? They're not hiring a temporary job. They're permanent positions. But they have found out how to totally circumvent federal labor law, which they're not supposed to do. So this is very unethical, and maybe it's not criminal, but maybe it is criminal. But they are circumventing state and federal law by design, or by default, or both. And now they have these foreign companies coming in from India and England who really probably don't care about American traditions of how you treat people good and as a team member in the employment arena. And now you have management who is afraid because they've seen 20 years, 30 years of cycle of layoffs. And if you're a younger, smart person, they just see you probably as their replacement. So you have managers now, and maybe you have 50% of people who don't do this. But you still, you probably, and I don't know what the percentage is, but everybody knows it's very high. But maybe you have 50% of the companies who do this. Well, this is so wrong for new hires. People just out of college or university enter the job market and have to deal with this horrible treatment they encounter. And now, when they get hired as these temporary jobs, and sometimes they're even temporary to permanent. That is true. But these managers are so nerve-wracked, they're probably convinced if you do make the 90-day probational period and do become a permanent employee, these managers are probably totally convinced because you're just as smart as they are, but younger, you are their replacement. Maybe it's not true, but these managers, especially unethical managers, are totally convinced of this. You know, these managers don't know what to do. They have a mortgage to pay. They have kids at home. You know, they probably go and take you to lunch on your 82nd day and say, oh, you know, this is, you know, you just have 7 days left on your assignment. I'm so sorry. It didn't work out. And the senior executive managers are worse. The senior executives, you know, the senior management people who lay off middle managers, they're worse because they're walking by their managers and saying, how you doing, you know, interacting with them like they're buds, when they know they probably already have a plan to go through another major layoff. Because that's all they know to do is to post a profit, is to save on the salary payroll. That's all they know. Now, I don't believe the European companies do this. You know, especially before COVID-19 and the Ukraine war, they were really treating their people good. You know, they were really treating them as team players. And Japan's economy before COVID-19 was really treating their people really good too, in comparison to what's going on here. Now, we still refer to our traditions of business like pre-1970s as being number one, the best in the world. And pre-1970s, that was true. But since the outsourcing of really, since the 1990s, during the Bill Clinton administration, and the outsourcing that has gone on, everything has changed. Managers have become some sort of strange model of just outsourcing, never-ending outsourcing. That's all they know. And now it's got to stop because now it's hurting the economy and our way of life. And in Communist China has proven that they are building up their military with all their profits they have made from really the Clinton administration by giving them all our market share of manufacturing, all those jobs, all those salaries that used to buy things in the United States, all those salaries that used to help small businesses out were sent over to China. All those salaries that used to be here before the 1990s, those people used to pay their own way. But since the outsourcing, since the 1990s, they all gone to Communist China. But those jobs really aren't in existence anymore. I'm not saying that people aren't going to dream about them returning someday. But leadership of the elites, who somehow we trusted and voted them in office, like the Clinton administration people, they have really screwed things up for our economy. And now we have to realize this. And now the people, the government of the people, by the people, for the people, we the people have got to get a hold of our state legislators and our congressmen and fix what was wronged. And now this new hiring managers model to hire people and treat people like widgets and never allow anyone to be hired permanently. Many times what they do is just hire somebody for a 90-day temporary assignment. But there's 4 90-day temporary assignments in a year. Or there's 8 90-day temporary assignments over a 2-year period. So there really was a permanent job. They just wanted to purposely circumvent state and federal labor laws. And they did it by design or default with the employment agencies, the staffing agencies, or the IT recruiters. But whether it was done by design or default, or probably both, it's got to end. And Congress has got to stop these people from doing it. And all these people, the senior executives at the top, all they're really doing it for now is for themselves. Number 1, for them. Number 2, for them. They're greedy people who don't care about anything but themselves. They say it's for the stockholders, but they're lying through their teeth. Because the stockholders were doing perfectly fine in the 1970s and before that. Before the 1970s, everybody was making good money with their stocks, dividends, value. Everyone was doing a lot better. So it just proves to everybody that these guys who want to outsource to China for what we thought was the right reason back then, but now we know is the wrong reason. Now we know it's got to end. And now they, by design or default, or both, they are circumventing state and federal law and treating, and it's just a cruel, unneeded reason they're doing this. They're treating all the new people entering the job market right out of college and university like widgets. And it's wrong. And they're purposely, and I think consciously, they're doing it to circumvent the state and federal law. Now, clearly, if they're hiring 4 temporary assignment positions for 90 days back to back in a year period, or 8 90-day temporary assignments over a 2-year period, clearly they're circumventing state and federal laws. Now, unscrupulous corporate companies are doing this by design or default with employment agencies, staffing agencies, and IT recruiters. And if we need to pass legislation either on the state level or the federal level to outlaw this. And if these people do this for 1 or 2 months and they continue to do it, after the second time, we just need to close these employment agencies down. We need to close these staffing agencies down. We need to close these IT recruiters down. These people are just breaking the law. And they're destroying our economy and our way of life. And sometimes the foreign agencies are worse than the American-based companies. American-born companies might still be working in the traditional American hiring methods. They might actually call the American corporation hiring manager and say, hey, you said you were going to hire this person. He is a good person. They have good ability, good character, good intelligence, and you said you were going to hire them. That might be enough for the people to hire them. But foreign-born IT recruiters out of India, or foreign-born or offshore companies out of London, They could care less. They're probably just looking at the bottom line. And they probably can't believe this is legal. They know they're circumventing state and federal labor law. They know they are. They can't believe it's allowed because they're doing it in broad daylight. They know they just kind of like told the world, hey, we're going to hire somebody on a temporary 90-day assignment. Back to back, 4 times in 1 year. Back to back, 8 times in a 2-year period. They know they're circumventing state and federal law, and they don't care. It's all about greedy people who don't care. Really about the American economy. And they don't have the old traditional Protestant American captains of industry mindset, or the old Catholic American captains of industry mindset that really built America prior to the 1970s, that paid everybody good and treated everybody good. They don't have these morals that built America. And all they have is unethical behavior, or maybe they don't say they have unethical behavior, but they have unethical actions. And actions speak louder than words. And this has got to end. So now, it's not your fault that you can't find a high-paid, salaried career and or job. Now you have to fix it by getting a hold of your state legislator or congressman to close down these employment agencies and staffing agencies and IT recruiters who are openly circumventing state and federal labor laws. And to rehash, to answer the question, what is real and what is not real? Why American people are losing belief in our American economic model. Well, it's because of nothing makes sense. Because the previous U.S. economy has been outsourced to a political and economic foe for greed or for short-term profits for very few at the top. The captains of industry that built the world's greatest economy, who were still at the helms in the 1970s and prior to the 1970s, they have been replaced by new captains. These captains are not captains of industry, but they are captains of greed. And that is why nothing makes sense. The greatest society in the world gave away its economy because of fear and greed. So it's not young people's fault for not being able to pay their own way. So young people who don't believe they can find a full-time job anymore, and that's because they've all been sent over to China. If people had a full-time job and could pay their own way, and if people had their own personal economy and have their own economic freedom and equality that comes with it as a U.S. citizen, and therefore most of their problems and issues would be remedied. If people could participate in the U.S. domestic economy and all those jobs were not sent overseas, those young people would have self-sufficiency and economic freedom. And with economic independence, they would be free from all issues. They would be content. And most of those issues would go away. So most of these issues are all these new acronyms for young people, and they're tagged to young people as mental issues and problems. Most of those mental issues, so-called mental issues, would go away with a 40-hour job if not all those U.S. jobs for our domestic economy were not outsourced and shipped on over to China.